Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi, has called for mandatory lifestyle audits for all South African prosecutors. The announcement follows growing concerns that the National Prosecuting Authority has been compromised by unethical elements and organized crime. Let's talk about this with Nkosana Mvundlela, President of the Black Lawyers Association. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Mvundlela. Thanks very much for your time. Your thoughts on what the minister had to say?
Good afternoon, Vuyo, and Happy New Year to you. Good afternoon to all your viewers. I wish to put it on record that we have come out in respect of this matter and support the call by the minister to ensure that there is this lifestyle audits. You would remember very well that recently in the interviews for the NDP, there was an argument about whether the NPA is compromised, whether it is the perception out there runs amok with the view that the prosecutors are selling cases and all those things. So a lifestyle audit would give the minister and the National Director of Public Prosecutions an opportunity to have these rogue elements, if they do exist within the NPA, to be exposed for the kind of activities they carry. But if they are not found, then you also have an opportunity that the NPA can stand tall on its call that they are prosecuting without fear or favor, irrespective of who you are, and they are not prone to this kind of conduct. So the BLA and the Law Society of South Africa would be very candid with the view of the minister that it is necessary that government officials stay within their means and they live within their means, and anybody found to may have crossed the line must be able to be dealt with in line with the NPA code of conduct as it would be expected.
But outside of what the minister has had to say and the questions that were being asked during those interviews of the National Director of Public Prosecutions, as the Law Society, also, is this an issue that you have interrogated?
Look, we are aware that there are prosecutors who were arrested not long ago. We are aware that it is of public knowledge that the NPA itself, somewhat people suspect that there may be political influence in some of the kind of decisions that they're making. But you would be also aware as members of the public and the media that you have an NPA that is managed in terms of the legislation and in terms of its internal principles. Our view is that to the extent that the NPA is the guardian of the rule of law for all members of the public, both the accused and the victims, therefore it must be as neutral as possible. And as the LSSA or the BLA would not have taken the time to interrogate that possibility, because when something doesn't rear its ugly head in front of you, you would believe that these prosecutors, all of them are clean, none of them is compromised. As a result, we encourage our members of the Law Society as legal practitioners, the advocates that comes before court, and members of the profession as they belong to different political organizations like BLA and so forth, that your interaction with the prosecution must be for the purposes of protecting the rule of law. So you don't immediately imagine a scenario in which a prosecutor is compromised. But when the debate starts in public, we are forced as the entities that have to participate in court every time to defend those that are arrested at all times, and even to sue the National Prosecution Authority, if they have prosecuted our clients and we believe that they took that decision without applying themselves. And in some cases, they do you do find courts coming out to say, but the prosecution here did not apply itself, and as a result, they are liable for the fact that they prosecuted this particular accused for an offense he or she did not commit. So it is something that is of concern to us. We may not be interrogating it at length as you would imagine, but it is something on the horizon for us to be able to watch out for. That is why we are quick to say the minister is on the right track about these audits.
What else is of concern to you, which you believe compromises the work of the National Prosecuting Authority?
I think it's leadership, because when you do not have a leadership that is in control of the entity, that is actually taking policies and making rules and making sure that there is strict adherence with those rules, and a leadership that can stand firm even in the face of any other criticism that comes across, and proves actually to the public that that criticism is unfounded, then you have a problem. Secondly, you then have all these scenarios where the DPPs and the NDP doesn't seem to be telling a coherent version of how they look at things. So these are things that worries us. The lack of leadership in the NPA, it's a worrying factor, because once that leadership fails to do what it is supposed to do, then you already have a problem going down, because leadership starting at the top and cascading down, it must be in such a manner that every prosecutor understands where the policy is, where the gaps are, why they should not open themselves up to a possibility of being influenced, and why they should prosecute without fear or favor, but why they should treat everybody who comes to court with all the utmost respect and within the ambit of the law.
Do you believe that the government, that is through the Minister of Justice, raising this issue of lifestyle audits, is also alive to the lack of leadership within the NPA that you are talking about, and which you say is compromising the work of that important institution?
I would be remiss to imagine that the minister is not aware, because I believe that she is working on this matter with that level of awareness.
That's what I'm asking, whether her actions say to you that she is indeed, and government broadly is indeed alive to this problem and what it does.
I think that she has a finger on the pulse. I would give her that, because she's the first person to raise it before anybody raised an alarm out there to say there is this level of either corruption, or there is this level of lack of compliance with the rules that you should be alive to, and then you must institute this. So for all intents and purposes, I think the fact that the issue is raised from her level tells a story that she is alive to it.
Now, the NDPP interviews were done, and Shamila Bato is scheduled to leave, I think, if I'm correct, in a couple of months' time.
In a month, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I meant to say in a couple of weeks' time, actually. What do you think, I mean, together with that appointment, or the speed with which that appointment has to be done, what else do you believe needs to be done. In other words, when that appointment is made, what else do you think needs to be taken into account, and what else needs to be done and done urgently? Because I've heard a lot of people saying the appointment of the NDT in and of itself is not what is going to take that institution forward and rebuild the trust that it has lost.
You are very right. Look, an appointment of one individual may not resolve all the problems that may exist in an institution. Our understanding is that there must be policy alignment, which we believe that it's there and not followed, and there's no consequences for non-compliance, or it's not there and somebody that gets appointed at whatever time that the president decides to appoint that kind of a person would then be able to come out and say, this is how we're going to deal with aligning the entire NPA in order for us to regain the public trust that we may have lost. Vuyo, you would be also alive to the fact that policy in a document without its application, it's as good as non-existent. So you need somebody who's going to actually act out in line with all the prescripts that are there. We are aware as the LSSA and BLA that there is a code of conduct that was passed, I think, since 2012, if not 2011, and it has not been set aside by anybody. The prosecution, the NPA Act itself guides the work of the NPA, and the Constitution calls upon the NPA to behave in a particular manner. Now, you expect that anybody who leads an institution like that must be able to say, all my managers and everybody that accounts to me is alive to what my expectations are of them and what the public's expectations are of them. So you don't expect that a person gets into office and then the wheel just turns and we're comfortable about it when we have already raised these concerns now. So that appointment, we hope when it is done, it will come with all these issues being taken into account, that whoever gets the nod then is able to implement every other requisite policy that is in existence. If it is not there, they develop it, and they deal with the prosecution top down until the prosecutor in the district court, and all of them must be able to understand their role. It is our clarion call that the legal profession itself would not sit idle and watch the rule of law being trampled over, and people who are innocent being prosecuted and people who are guilty not being prosecuted simply because the NPA is unable to do its job. We would not sit idle and let that kind of scenario continue. So that is how we are going to actually then stand guard at the door of court to say these are institutions that we must defend, and for us to defend them, the institutions of government that are given the power to prefer charges against people are not compromised, and they shouldn't be compromised.
We've run out of time, and I'm going to thank you for talking to us, but not before I ask you for a very brief comment on this matter. We've seen over the past year protests across our courts, people unhappy about remuneration, equality, and other issues. What is your position on the protests we've seen outside our magistrates' courts in particular?
It's an unfortunate scenario that you're asking about. I would imagine that the issues of remuneration are employer and employee issues that must be discussed in that space. The expectation from ourselves is that when people apply for a job and they are told this is the salary you're going to get, They then go through the interviews as normal and they accept the terms of appointment. If at any given time they become unhappy and they confront the employer and the employer decides, I don't have more money to add, people have all the rights to actually decide what is it that they should do with the service that they have undertaken to render. We would encourage that the government in that conversation be able to engage with its employees within the ambit of the labor laws of South Africa and reach an amicable solution for the benefit of everybody who has to access our courts. South Africa is a constitutional state. We depend on the rule of law, and we can't afford to have people who are supposed to execute anything that has to do with the rule of law being the ones standing outside and our ordinary people suffering at the hands of such conduct. So we call on government and those unions that are representing the employees to find each other one way or another in order to protect the rule of law and the image of these institutions.
Nkosana Mvundlela, let me thank you very much for your time. President of the Black Lawyers Association.